Okay, I'm trying again. Now, this is a video about a movie today. Finally, I get back onto a movie. But instead of doing The Innocents, which was the movie that I intended to do for a month and a half, and even one or two others that I have lately seen, I am going to do a small chat, because that's what my videos really are. They're really a chat. They're not really, they're a fantasy chat, okay? For those that are interested in fantasy chats. Now, I'm going to do this video on a movie that I saw about 20 years ago. It was made in 1984. I did not see it till, as usual, until about 20 years, like the Matrix movie, usually about 20, 25 years after the movies first come out. Because I am behind the times. As all human beings are probably about 50 years behind the actual matrix that controls this world, or that they are in, the Earth matrix. Human beings are thinking, feeling, human beings, spiritual beings really, and that title is only there because spiritual is different to technical. This is, of course, only my particular way of putting my little video, shall we say. Because, I can't tell someone that uses a lot of technology. I can't tell someone even if, because technology, for some people could be their God. And in fact, for many people it is. Because the being that controls and is the God of this Earth matrix is a technical being. And, part of, if you think a God is spiritual, which I suppose you would, and that God is technical, then it would probably be reasonable that you would go in the opposite direction to my videos and say that there's nothing wrong with technical being spiritual. In fact, if everything is technical, then it is spiritual. It's just that we don't understand that we're technical. Well, look, that is another fairy tale. That is another scenario. That's not one that I indulge in. I accept it as a reality, but I do not endorse it as a beneficial reality, and I do not see it as my reality. And that is in the face of everything pointing in that direction. Because I've already said we're spiritual beings, we're human beings, but we are in a total technological domain. This earth is immersed in technology. This earth is technology. It literally is. So, it doesn't matter if you have a tree standing in amongst the technology. It is still a technical domain. Because if you have Wi-Fi towers and one tree in the centre of it, that tree is like the little old human being. It is going to be just not only surrounded by technology, but technology will be passing through the tree and passing through me and anyone else that is not of a technological or artificial substance, shall we say, if you want to look at it that way. you know, different, because human beings are spiritual human beings, and because they are almost frequency and vibration, which is invisible, like technology. It's a battle, it's a frequency battle. It's a frequency battle. It's a frequency vibration battle. I don't understand what I'm talking about. I don't understand these things because I'm just someone that has just seen this. But I don't understand it because I'm not, I haven't studied these things, and, I'm ignorant of these things. Now, but you see where I'm coming from, but this is not really, I've rambled off in another direction when I'm going to talk about a movie. But I just thought, I just like to point out that, you've got, if you've got frequencies that are in opposition to one another, a frequency is not going to affect a piece of steel the same way that it affects a natural vibration frequency organism or substance or whatever. I don't know what I am talking about here. Perhaps it might be best to forget what I just said because I have gone off. Even when I do my fantasy little chats here, I do like to keep the fantasy in a little bit of the realm of the possible or the reality. I don't like to totally, I will use anything I can for the video, but I do like to keep it, all I can say is thank goodness that some people like to stretch their imagination into fantasy, because otherwise there'd be no point in me making these videos, because my original intent was to talk to normal, sane, average people and just point out that yes, we don't live in a logical world, or I don't think we do, and that even to point that out in kind of practical ways, because that's how I thought we are. But that went out the window a while back when I realised that there's not a real lot of those people left, and it's probably just as well, because I'd probably still be talking to air, whereas now, I might talk to a few people, but, they've extended their imagination, and also they can see an imaginative reality that many others can't see or don't want to see, or it isn't there. I say that only because there might be the odd one of that other person viewing, and I don't know, but I always do that for that reason. It's a bit like everything else, isn't it? It's who you're talking to. You will change your conversation according to who you're talking to. And as I've said in the last video, in this reality, you could be the best talker, you could be the master psychologist of this world. You could be every genius rolled into one, but you will have a hard time actually conversing, much less winning any form of argument with the lowest level psychopath, much less the intelligent ones. They will literally wipe the floor with the best of us, and they do. And that is because a logical mind cannot argue with a very focused, illogical mind. You would think that you would be able to, but either way, that's not relevant, and I'm sorry about this again. Now, with the movie, okay, I'm not going to do The Innocents, even though I have seen that movie over 6 times in the last month, right through. Instead, I'm going to do a video on a movie that I saw 20 years ago. 20 years, 20, 25 years is usually, like I say, the time span that I will finally catch up with the movie. And in the Matrix world we live in, I've said before, most of us, everything that is in the Matrix is 50, what we experience in the Matrix is at least 50 years behind what is the Matrix. And much, much more than that, really. But you don't get to see anything that is of the Matrix until at least many years after it has after it already exists. Just like I don't get to see the movies till 20, 25 years after they've already been shown. Why that is another thing. But either way, like the Matrix movie, I didn't see that till, last 2 years. Well, I'm not sure when it was, but you'd have to check my videos to find that out. But maybe a year and a half ago now. Probably, maybe a year. Maybe a year, that's right, because I've only been, maybe a year. Okay. But anyway, the movie was made in 1984, even though I saw it, probably about 20 years ago. I have not seen it since. I did not intend making a video on it. I do not like the movie. It's an Academy Award winning movie. It won many awards, but that is why I watched it eventually. Now, the reason I didn't like it was, well, I will tell you the theme of it if you haven't already seen it. If you've already seen it, you may not need to even watch the video, but I'm using this movie as part of another scenario that I had touched on before and that I want to make more of a video about, but I just don't have the know-how or enough knowledge or enough information or enough confidence, really, to be honest, to do it. I have to say that. Whereas I'm just feeling confident enough to do it on a movie because the movie is already been done. So it's okay for me to talk about a movie. The movie is complete. It is of the Matrix. It is, it's all there in the movie. It's for you to draw comparisons. I'm going to draw comparisons to the Matrix from the movie, that's all. And the movie can apply to, like even this movie. I'm just going to say it and bore everyone again, but I'm just going to say even this movie, any movie, but this movie even though I'm only going to present it from one standpoint. I'm only going to take it one way. But there are 3 ways you can take it. And I might even go into those other ways in another video when I've got more time and more energy. But I'm just going to try to present the one thing that came to me about it a day ago. And all that came to me from a day ago was a line that popped up. And I actually wrote it down, which is good for me because I usually try to do videos without writing anything down. And, you should really just jot at least a line down. Like when I was doing the video on the song Human, I didn't really have the lyrics in front of me. And so I was going off memory and it makes for a muddled video because I'm confident that I can get the vibe and the idea. But no, it doesn't work that way. It's better to have it. But either way, this movie Armedeus, right? I'll just do a little, Armedeus is the name of the main character in the movie. Well, actually, interesting. Really, the main character in the movie, there's really two main characters. Keep my fingers away there. Two main characters. There is Armedeus. Armedeus is the middle name, evidently, and I do not know much about classical music or a real lot about a lot of music. I know if I hear something, but I'm not studied these things. And I would, like I say, that's ignorance again too. But but either way, that's not relevant, I don't think, because the movie stands on its own. I did not like the movie, and this is why. Okay, so the movie is about a very famous composer, probably one of the greatest composers, even to my limited knowledge. That is, Amadeus is the middle name. It's Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, of course. Now, the main character in the movie, apart from Amadeus or Mozart, is Salieri. In fact, Salieri is the whole point of the movie. He was a composer, a musician, a conductor. He was the king's favourite composer, conductor, musician at the time. The king was the all in those days. The kings and queens, they governed all the land. They were extremely important. They even Mozart, Amadeus, was reliant on his livelihood, and even his fame was in the hands of the king always. Now, because, if you weren't in the king's favour and the king didn't allow you to perform or didn't give you any commissions in any field, you would have, like I've said, be the human that's on the street corner with the hat. But I'm not going to go into that because I've already gone into the reverse world. These are of the Matrix, but that's not relevant. I'm going to talk about the movie. This is another aspect of the Matrix, or another aspect of life, or if you think it is. If you don't think it is, if you don't think this is the movies have any relevance to anything, that's another thing. That's fair enough too. Now, the Salieri was the king's favourite, most renowned composer, conductor, musician at the time. And he evidently also believed that he was the best and that he had been blessed, and he was quite content, happy. Now, what happened in this film? Because essentially that's right, it is about these two people, characters. One day, this character, who was a composer and a musician, evidently came to the king's attention, and this was Armedeus. Now, Armedeus Mozart was a natural genius at music, I'm guessing. Most people would agree with that, I would think. But like I say, I'm not greatly familiar with the works of this person, so I'll admit my ignorance here. And but either way, that's not the point. I'm making the video based on one or two lines from the movie, and this movie and this line sums up a character that essentially at some point becomes what I would say possessed. Now, I can't say this 100%, but I'm just saying this is how I view the movie. And this possession consumes Salieri, the court favourite composer. You know, he was number one at this time in the king's eyes and in his favour. You could say world famous, okay? But he became consumed, overtaken, or possessed, if you like, with extreme animosity and resentment, anger, envy, great envy of Armedeus, or Mozart, if you like. And I'm just going to quote the one line which I've written down if I can read it here, and then I will try to bring it into a fantasy that could be comparable to what happens in this Earth matrix and how the human beings are part of this. Because this is also what I would say is also very much like the Archon mind parasite that we've talked about. That is a similar thing. It's let me just read this line. I'll try to make sense of this video. I know I'm going to bungle this video chat up again. I'm just not very good at piecing these things together, but I'll do my best. But anyway, here is the line. I'll just have a little peek over here at it. Okay, so this... I'll just wait for the plane to go overhead. Now, this is Armedeus not speaking, this is Salieri speaking. This is the person that has got overwhelmed with envy of another composer or person, because Salieri realised that Armedeus or Mozart, I'll just say Armedeus so you know that I mean, because that's the name of the movie, that Armedeus had an ability at music and composing that far surpassed his, and he was consumed with envy at this, you know, because his music paled by comparison and he would lose his position, and he just found it very difficult, I think, to live with himself knowing this. But at any rate, he acknowledged it, though, strangely enough. He totally acknowledged it because he was an intelligent man and did know music. loved music. So he was able to see someone that had genius or ability that he didn't have, that he wished he did have. And basically this led to great envy and resentment, because essentially he couldn't understand why this had been given to someone else instead of him. He was, as far as the movie goes, as far as I can see, he was he believed in his God, the God of that time. Don't ask me who these gods all are, because I have problem enough dealing with the God of the Matrix. But no, I'm trying to be funny here, but it is not really funny. This is serious stuff. I shall try to piece it together and relate it to the world now, because the world back then is still the world now, although it's now a matrix. But it may have been a matrix back then anyway, because like I say, a matrix doesn't have to... A matrix is technological, or at least a matrix is a controlled system, but it doesn't have to be as technologically advanced or as technologically operated, shall we say, as what it now is, because we're aware of that. But it's still, it's still under the influence and the domain of the technological God, because this being has been around since the beginning, or a long time anyway. Of course, I'm making this up, so I can't give you dates, and I'm terribly sorry about that, but, it's all a fantasy. But either way, I shall try to read it. This Salieri, this composer, consumed with envy, the line that I picked out to make this video, the basis of this whole video is based on this line or two. And this person openly says to another person, the music was miraculous. The music was a miracle. The music was miraculous. Unbelievable. He could not believe the music of Armedeus. The music was miraculous. I could not contemplate that through this childlike, vulgar, ridiculous little man, God was speaking. Salieri could not understand that his God had bestowed on Armedeus, in his own words, this childlike, vulgar, ridiculous little man. That was how Salieri saw him, and this was how he physically presented himself even in the movie. And, and yet from his mind was coming this miraculous music that even Salieri could see that it was from a higher source. Salieri himself was a refined, intelligent man. In his own mind, he thought that he was worthy, much more worthy, to have had these gifts bestowed on him. And instead he has seen his God bestow this great musical genius and all this ability, all these gifts, the ability to create miraculous music. on what he considered to be, yes, a child that was, yes, vulgar, ridiculous in his whole demeanour, as the movie did present Armedeus this way too. So at this point, realising this, Salieri could not understand that his God had done this. He didn't accept it. So his vibration went right down, you could say. Yes, he opened the door to possession, to negativity, to envy, to hate, to extreme jealousy. I'm trying to find words because, essentially it drove him into a form of madness, you could say. He lost all rationale, and his humanity flew out the window and the negative mind parasites flew in, if you want to look at it that way. But a form of possession took place. And at this point, and as the movie goes, if I can remember a scene, he had an emblem of his God on the wall, a cross, and he picks it up, pulls it off the wall and throws it into the fire, and more or less says and vows almost that from this moment on, I will set myself against you, my own God, and against this Armedeus. Because Armedeus, I will set myself against and destroy your incarnation in the form of Armedeus. Because this is how Salieri sees it in the film. He sees Armedeus as an incarnation of his God. His God has given this person all the most beautiful music and denied it to him, Salieri. Salieri probably considers himself God's number one disciple. He probably, up to that point, thought that God had been very generous to him. So he saw it as a form of rejection and a belittlement of him. Say, you served me, you are, oh sorry, I'm getting muddled up here. These videos do get muddled, don't they? Oh, I try too hard. Like Salieri, I guess, at least I just hope that I'm not going to be totally possessed during the course of the chat or the video. But it can happen, But it depends on the degree. You see, he became totally consumed because he then set himself against his own God that he believed in and against Armedeus. It was like, I'm going to set myself against you and against your incarnation, Armedeus. Now, it's an interesting movie in that respect. You probably would say, why would... I'm just going to ramble here, I'm sorry. I suppose it just occurs to me this second that, you have a devout disciple that worships and follows you, and you decide to bestow more gifts, and the gifts that this other person desires and thinks is their just a right, shall we say. If like I suppose Salieri thought, well, if you're going to bestow all this musical genius on anyone, why would you not bestow it on, your most devout disciple? I have believed in you, and you rewarded me, but now you give all more gifts to this pathetical little ridiculous vulgar man that doesn't appear to represent you very well. It seems to almost be at odds with what this person would, can basically endure in their own mind. They would have suffered it better had the musical gifts been given to someone of high class like themselves, shall we say, if you want to look at it that way, because Mozart in the film was presented as, in his own words, I am a vulgar little man. He actually said that to the king, apologising because he spoke very loosely even at that time. In fact, his opera, I think, was rejected by the king because he saw it as not befitting an opera, not class enough, not befitting the what they represent and their beliefs and their gods, etc. I'm probably exaggerating here, but then again, these are fantasy videos, so it's okay. So excuse me if you take any of these movies literally, because I have not seen it for a long time. So it's just something to make a point or to make an idea and connect it to our own reality. If you think it fits. If you don't think it fits, don't connect it. I'm just doing that because I see some comparison or connection, shall we say. Now, so that's really all I was getting at in this video, or the fantasy. That line struck me as strange. It just leapt out at me that here was a being, because Salieri was a being, or a human being, if you like, and he became consumed with anger and resentment at another being that he recognised to be at a different level to him in his chosen field. And he did not understand why his creator, and the creator, shall we say, had bestowed so much on, another being that he saw as inferior, shall we say. That was how he saw it. And he became bitter and angry from that day forth, and set himself the task of destroying and eventually, eliminating completely this armedeus that he saw as, an incarnation in the form of the music of his God. I don't think I put that very well. I think I've muddled that up. I'm trying to put it the best way I can, but I can't quite get it. Because, it's just like in this matrix world that we live in. I often say that the demigods, the most impressive people that you see around, are the demigods of the matrix. They're the representations of the God entity of the matrix. And Mozart, I suppose, was back then in whatever year that was, or in the movie, if you want to look at it, because I don't know if these people actually existed 100 years ago or not, hundreds and hundreds of years ago or not. I don't know about Solaria or any of these things. I'm only going on the movie. Doesn't matter. It's all fantasy, I think, anyway. But Mozart, in Salieri's eyes, was seen as a demigod or a representation of his god that he believed in and worshipped, and up to that point had followed. And but he felt, I guess, he was consumed with the envy, yes, and all those sorts of words, and it turned then to malice and, to actually despising and hating Armedeus. But essentially, if you want to look at it, it was, he turned more against his own God, and no doubt what he would have considered his own creator, probably. I'm guessing that. I'm not sure, because, we live in a strange matrix world now where not everything is what you would think. Because if you just thought like you think, oh, we just live in a natural world, just natural humans, and we're never sure of where we come from or where we're going or what the big thing is, it's it makes it rather different to a matrix, or at least to the matrix that I often fantasize or talk about. And so this situation got this Solaria to where he then wanted to devote only the rest of his life, and his his goal was to destroy, in his chosen way, Armedeus. And in order to do this is why I didn't like the movie when I did see it. One, I would have to say, back then I didn't fully understand it, or certainly thought there was no basis in reality for it. And I found the darkness, like there was a scene in it where it seemed to go beyond just the physical, in the sense that, I think I would say now that like if you want to look at it from this one angle, because like I say, you could look at it from a couple of angles. I always say there's 3 ways to look at all movies and to look at almost everything. So any one could be correct. I'm just coming from this one vantage point, connecting it to another fantasy, which I was saying was a possibility for our matrix. It may be a reality, but, or it could be a fairy tale. But that will depend on how much you see of the matrix, how clear your thinking is, how much you actually really do know about it, how much you've experienced, and essentially what is the bottom line reality, or the top line reality, I don't know. But either way, I've gone off here. I would say that at some point, it almost appeared in the movie that Salieri rejected his own God, or at least in the movie he threw the effigy into the fire and said that he was, from that moment on, going to do everything in his power to, destroy what he saw as God's incarnation of armedeus, if you want to look at it that way. Now, I'm rambling and losing it here again. It appeared to me, and I'd have to look at the movie again, which I probably should have done, but like I said, I didn't like the movie, but that doesn't matter. I mean, just because you don't like something doesn't, I will watch movies that I don't actually like if I think that they can be part of, incorporated into the fantasies or the reality, depending on how you look at it. If I think they have some merit for my way of looking at reality, because it's only however you want to look at reality. Each person will see reality different. How far you are to the real reality is another thing. It's not something you can tell most people, and it's not something that you probably should. I just say I put the fantasies there, and like I say, there's just that decision of what you will accept as reality, which is also part of the possession and all this stuff that I've rambled on about and now losing it because my mind has drifted off to the innocence just there, and I'm supposed to be on armedeus. And I was about to go off onto the human song again too, because I know there's some connection there too, because there is definitely that idea of disconnecting from the human too. That's right. Are you human or are you dancer? Maybe Salieri was human and became dancer, or you could reverse it if you want to. I don't know, because they're, like I say, these things are all whichever way you want to take them. I might only accept one for myself. I'll look at the three things and I'll pick one, as most people do. You pick what you think is the real reality, or close to it, or you at least think you're on the path to getting to the road to find out, as they say. That's a song too, by the way, just come to me, a very old song. Just as well we have some of the Matrix songs and movies, otherwise my videos would be even worse than what they are. But, because really, you can bring it down to basics. But whether you've hit the bottom line basic is another thing. I would not think that I have, but I think that I still hit a few more basics than what I used to, but that's because, some things are like, I think it's, if I didn't accept some things that I see, it would be, I think that's saying flying in the face of reality. That's how I see it now, but I don't even know if I got that right. But at any rate, yes, this is a movie definitely worth seeing if you can get through it. And you should be able to, because it is an Academy Award winning movie. So it's not like some of the movies that I will use, because I think everything has some merit. Everything is part of the matrix. Every movie ever made, every song ever written, even every bit of legend. It's just a matter of, I think this is how I would look at it. See, I will pick things out of these things. And it will be up to me or you or anyone else to say what is really believable in these things. Does this really fit the matrix? But of course, if you don't think it's a matrix, then you will probably dismiss things that I will say are a reality, you see. So it depends on what you think the reality is, and also you would have to go along the line of my own way of looking at it now, that because human beings are the centre and the source of the matrix or the earth, they can't be denied total truth, I don't think. They can't be denied a glimpse at the real reality, because, and this is why I find some of these other things interesting. This is the only reason I'll go onto a movie like Armedeus or talk about beliefs and things and different ideas that way, because they have to be part of this reality, I would say now. They have to be, because otherwise, as I've said before, there would be no reason for any reality to be shown to us. Because, if you're in a matrix and you're playing in a game, a game with the idea of, like I say, a chess game where that some of your opponents, if they could get it, shall we say, if you want to look at it that way, if we could really get it and understand what reality we're in, and be able to break through this frequency barrier, this vibration wall that is being erected around us. The idea is to try and break through. But it is a very thick wall now. And because of the particular period of time we're in, this barrier is almost unbreakable, impenetrable for us, and also very much impenetrable for outside support, shall we say. Now, I'm not quite sure how all this, like I say, I don't know how it all works. It's an idea, but it certainly appears that way. It certainly looks as though all gates have been closed, all avenues of breaking through. Like how I say we're spiritual beings, everything is frequency and vibration and energy, and we are part of that, and we influence that, we send that. We are the frequency and the vibration in a funny kind of way. It's hard to explain because I don't understand it, and I'm not able to operate it at proper potential because of the situation we're in. Now, and like I say, it's a frequency battle, really. I mean, it can be, and it will be, and it's a physical battle also. The frequency I personally thought was the key, in the sense that if human beings can break through and elevate their frequency, shall we say, elevate their vibration, elevate their feelings and their emotions to a neutral level or a happy level, shall we say, if you want to look at it that way. That was an interesting thing about that Armedeus movie I noticed, was that the character of Armedeus in it, Salieri was very serious, very refined, very intelligent, very classy. And he was confident and content in himself in a funny kind of way. But the character of Armedeus was very frivolous, and in his own words, too salary, vulgar and ridiculous and silly, and offensive to Saleri, you know. And it offended him that people took to this Armedeus so easily, because he had the gift of great music, and he himself was full of life. It appeared to be, yes, vulgar and silly to Saleri, but essentially Armedeus really was able to, at his core, he had potential for vibration, high vibration. Yes, I suppose you could say there was no malice in Armedeus, in Mozart. If you want to look at it that way. None at all. In fact, in the movie, one like is sometimes the case in the Matrix with its disciples, etc., etc. Saleri befriended Armedeus. Armedeus thought that Saleri was his friend. He trusted him. He did not realise that this other composer had set everything in his mind against him, you know, and could not stand living while Armedeus lived and succeeded and operated at full potential, projecting his music, and you know, it was intolerable to Saleri. He just became consumed. He opened the gate open. He threw away his beliefs. He threw away everything that his life had been, because he could not stand it. And he opened the door to negative possession, you could say. He opened the door willingly to negative possession. He ended up bowing down to the Matrix God entity, you could say, if you want to look at it that way. And, you know, and that's what sometimes happens in a matrix or in an earth. And in the movie he was successful too, because in the movie he did actually kill and lead to the death of Armedeus. He even he gloated over it. He knew it was wrong, but he couldn't help it. And part of the reason that he got away with it too was because Armedeus trusted him. He did not know that that others were against him and were plotting against him, that Saleri was plotting his demise. In fact, he thought that he was a helpful friend. And this can sometimes be the case too in a mixed up matrix, as in life and in relationships, and certainly is the case in this period of time in this matrix. And anyway, I think I'm going to close now. This will be a short video for me, which maybe I won't even send it. But it's just that idea of Soleri, a human being, you know, changing and allowing circumstances, allowing, you know, that mentality of, which is understandable, we've all done it. Look, I've known people, and in fact, the only reason that I took this sentence down was because this was a movie. When I had only seen it once, the movie didn't affect me at all when I saw it 20 years ago. I didn't like the movie, I didn't get it, I did not relate to it. But many others related, strangely enough, to the character of Soleri. They understood that consumption of extreme envy. Of course, I'm not saying I haven't experienced that in my life, no, but not so much in my later years, but certainly in younger times. You know, in fact, this whole matrix world is built on that. It is built on everyone to a large extent feeling and seeing that others have more than them, whether it be usually in talent and in gifts, and then that transfers to money and comforts and a better life in the matrix, fame and fortune, money, all these things, respect in the matrix, acknowledgement, you know, power, all these sorts of things that human beings hanker for greatly in the matrix, as we all have. And it leads to discontent and to bad actions, as it's done in my life. But it just took me a long time to realise it, and if the matrix hadn't been closing down like it is at this time, I still probably wouldn't have fully got it. So there you go. But, you know, the matrix actually operates that way and actually directs human beings through all this. If we dismissed and got rid of a lot of that comparison to other people, but also if we actually knew or understood or realised the reality, in my fantasy way of looking at it, because you may not agree with this, that the ones that are the demigods, those that you envy and admire and look up to and follow and listen to and worship and would, in the blink of an eye, probably desire to swap places with, they are not what they appear to be. They are not, they're not like in the movie Armedeus, where the movie itself presents a clear case of a human being, for whatever reason, having more musical genius, more gifts than another. I personally, and this just come to me this very second, so take it with a grain of salt if you will, I would say that Mozart or Armedeus was able to produce more genuine, more feeling, real genius level music, because this individual, despite appearances, was at, or at least was able to touch on, a higher frequency. Or, yes, maybe as the movie tells it, or a version of the movie, or a way of looking at the movie, this Armedeus was in closer contact, despite appearances, with the same God that Salieri did worship up to that point when he discarded his God because of disappointment and envy at feeling that he should have been bestowed the same gifts as Armedeus. He did not understand that his frequency was not high enough to receive those gifts. He thought that, that it was just perhaps belief or whatever. Hey, I'm making this up and I've lost my whole train of thought and the whole idea, and none of it's making any sense. And this is the interesting thing about beliefs in so many things that, I have not studied. I've not followed any particular denominations much at all. But in recent times, very recent times, I do find it interesting that I've lost my train of thought there. Interesting that so many different belief systems I've lost my train of thought. I told you I didn't know what I was talking about. But, it's like I say, to me, watching that and relating it to the frequency and vibration that we talk about now, if it's part of the reality, it's possible that although Salieri appeared to be in closer contact with, his God, his frequency was probably vibration lower. So maybe he wasn't, despite appearances. Maybe this funny, ridiculous, vulgar little man, as he described him, and even he acknowledged, I would say that maybe he was more pure in his, I think I've used this term before, and I think it's a term that others have used, more pure of heart in a funny kind of way. Like I can ramble here and talk till the cows come home, as they say. And that would be nice if there were some cows coming home. But there may not really be enough, there probably is not enough purity of the heart. There probably is really not a genuine high enough frequency, a genuine high enough vibration. It's missing. Now, and of course that is the world we're living in now, so that they make an attempt to bring that vibration down and that frequency down. In other words, like maybe some of us were trying to clutch at that straw and say, hey, look, I've failed miserably in my life and I have done many negative things, but it hasn't benefited me, and and I was misguided or guided by the matrix. You can blame it on the matrix, but you still that's what I say, as a person you should really still be able to see something that is kind of true, and you do, but if you don't think that if you don't really, that's what I say, if you don't really see anything beyond this material world, I'm sounding too fancy here. That sounds too much, the material world and all that. Look, I suppose it just depends on how much, each person's amount of how much they're able to raise that frequency and think good thoughts, I suppose, really. It's very hard to think good thoughts in a negative matrix that is deliberately setting itself against human beings. The same way Salieri set himself against Mozart. But he did it through deception, because he didn't ever openly antagonise or harass or try to hurt or even damage Armedeus in any way. Rather the reverse. He seduced him with his personality and befriended him and came in the form of a helper, whereas he was really a hinderer and a destroyer, if you really want to look at it. And the basis of the movie was him reciting to a priest, if I can vaguely remember. And I did sneak a little tidbit yesterday because, one of the advantages of the internet is that you don't have to watch a whole movie. You can just watch, say, 2 minutes. And the way I do things now, I take a minute or two of something and I take that ball and I run with it. Where I'm running, I'm not quite sure half the time, but if it fits my little fairy tale, I piece it in there, it's a little bit like piecing together Frankenstein's monster, isn't it, really? That's what we end up when we end up with the Matrix. We make a Frankenstein's monster. That's what the Matrix is. It's pieces of dead stuff put together to make a Frankenstein's monster Matrix Earth world. That doesn't make any sense at all. I don't know why I said that. See, when I try to be too clever or too smart about things, it just it doesn't actually make any sense. But it is kind of like that sometimes, all I'm saying is that even my fantasy, it's kind of a negative fantasy, isn't it, in a way? Because I'm going with the negative matrix. I'm going with that conception of a negative matrix Earth. So therefore, every bit of information, or if I choose to cherry pick, as they say, cherry pick one line out of a movie, or cherry pick a movie, the way a take on a movie as opposed to another take, because like I say, you can, obviously a movie like even Armedeus, it was made, the story is actually quite clear, so what I'm saying about it isn't particularly profound in any way at all. In fact, it's really just taking what you watch the movie as it is. Even though when I saw it, I didn't take it that far. In fact, I just found it disturbing, some of the scenes in it, because I didn't understand, because there were scenes in it where it did appear very evil, very anti-life. The masks and he had joined forces with death, or a death-like character, in order to destroy Armedeus. I think some people call that making a pact with the devil. I'm not quite sure what that means, but he did seem to reject his own belief, his own God that he would have believed in, whatever that was, and appeared to, and probably then got his strength from, allowing a negative death-like force to come into him, because he felt that if he couldn't be, because he didn't I would say that if I want to stretch it, because perhaps I won't, I'll leave it. I think that most people that would listen would get this idea, and if you see the movie, you'd probably be able to get even more out of it than me, and you'd see it probably clearly, especially if you're coming from um, a realistic angle, or what I'd say is a realistic angle, even if you're watching this movie. Because anytime you watch any movie, to me, it then while you're watching a movie, it becomes real. So while you're actually watching a movie, even if you don't agree with the themes of it, even if you don't have a belief in a matrix, if you don't have a belief in particular, you don't have a belief system for your life in any way, you don't have any ideas or any ideals of anything, you don't, while you enter into a movie, any movie, that old saying, you suspend disbelief. My own way of looking at it is that now I see it as going further into reality, not suspending disbelief like I used to think and like I used to enjoy the movies more for that. Because particularly if you're seeing something, like I say, Armedeus, I didn't like it. I didn't like it even though I suspended disbelief. So I should like it even less now if I say it has aspects of what I would consider to be a true reality in it. And I would think that now, not all fairy tales are pleasant, and in most fairy tales, you have a certain amount of anti-life or evil in them, quite a bit. They may have a happy ending in some, as a lot of movies do too. But anyway, I've gone off the track. But either way, yeah, I think I've rambled enough on this movie, and so I'll leave it here because I didn't intend to make it on this one. And it's, if you'd have said to me a week ago that I will do a video on the movie called Armedeus, I'd have said, no way, I don't like that movie, there's nothing there. And it's strange that I didn't realise until I just saw this two sentences from the movie jump out at me to realise that the movie is very much relevant to our Matrix world, which is interesting. So you end up making a video on something that you didn't intend to, and not on my list, and not. But like I say, that's what I'll do now. If something's relevant to me, if I see it as something that fits the fantasy puzzle, or the reality puzzle, or any puzzle at all, or even just if I want to make a video about it, why not? I hope there's no harm done in doing that, and I don't think there is for the people that listen. But for some, who knows, it's... Anyway, it's time for me to depart, I think. Hopefully not indefinitely, but anyway, thank you.